can't keep my hands to myself. Think I dust them all, put them back up on the shelf. Cause my little baby girl is in need. Am I coming out of left field? Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Got another mouth to feed. Leave her with the babysitter, mama call the grave digger. Oh, gone with the falling leaves. Am I coming out of left field? Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might have had your feel, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. We can fight a war for peace. Give into that easy living, goodbye to my hopes and dreams. Stop living for the enemies. We can wait until the walls come down. Time to give a little to the kids in the middle of all till it falls. Won't bother me. Is it coming? 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 Is it coming back? Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks. Yeah, your love is in a fist from my heart to eclipse now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Say, ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Good evening and welcome to Lancaster University's Library Festival. This is the second evening that we've been celebrating incredible guests with stories to tell us and the most amazing music. So really looking forward to being able to share that with you this evening. Of course, it is a very poignant anniversary as well. This is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And some of the subjects that we want to talk about relate to community and they relate to peacekeeping. They relate to the importance of the relationships that people have with each other. So I hope that you'll just sit back, you'll enjoy the couple of hours that we've got planned for you this evening. And even if you don't manage to watch it immediately, it's going to be online for quite a while. So welcome to this evening, and I have some amazing guests, and I'm really glad to say that most of them have become dear friends as well as guests. So if I go off-piste, which is perfectly likely, and Chris is already worried that I'm not going to have the script that he gave me to read this evening, then we're just going to see how the evening develops. One of the first people that I was told that I had to meet when I came to Lancaster University was Marion McClintock. And the reason I was told is because Marion is a legend. And I mean that in the most sincere way that I possibly can. This woman has a memory ability like I have never seen in anybody else. And if you wanted to know any piece of small information about the history of the university, then it's always Marion that we go to. She was the registrar for the university between 1994 and 2006, and she's our Honorary Archivist. She's the author of not just one, but two histories. You can never have enough histories, can you, of a university? So she's the author of two histories. And she'll probably be a little bit cross with me, and for those of you who know Marion, that's a really frightening prospect. But she'll be cross with me that we managed to celebrate a coffee and a cake event to celebrate an extremely important milestone birthday. But I'm far too much of a lady to say on air what that birthday was, but it was an important one. But what it does do is it allows me to welcome Marion and to let Marion tell you just how long she has been at Lancaster University. Marion, you're very welcome. How long have you been here?
We came in 1968 from Duke University, North Carolina, by ship across the Atlantic, over to Southampton, straight up to Lancaster.
Wow. You must have seen some inordinate changes in the university over those years. What would you say is the biggest change?
Obviously, size and reputation, the extent to which it became an international university, and the extent to which it gained confidence in the subject range, the research, in its student types and numbers. So, a wonderful evolution.
And one of the things that happens when you arrive on Lancaster Station is there's a big sign that says Lancaster University. What's the relationship like now, and what was it like at the beginning between the town and the gown? How's it changed? Do you think there's more for us to do?
Yes, that's an important question. You, Sue, were at Lancaster Priory earlier this week for the installation of the new Vicar of Lancaster and to welcome her on behalf of the university. And that was an important moment because it meant that the Priory was recognising the importance of having the university there, and the university was recognising the importance of connections. We have the Millrace project, we have the Eden project, we have the health innovation campus being used for the vaccinations. All those are very positive. When we came, it was very different. Lancaster was in a bit of a sorry state. It was losing its status as a county town, and it was losing its manufacturing capacity as well. So the university came along at just the right moment. But it had been the dream child of people like the town clerk and the mayor and Earl Peel, not of every person on the street. And I think there was a sense of, hesitation, shall we say. There is a lovely photograph. Students used to have a rag week. In fact, I have to explain, it's extraordinary, but used to have a rag week when they raised money for charity by doing silly things. And one of the things that they did on this occasion was to have a flower and water fight outside the City Museum. And someone had the foresight to take a photograph of a bystander standing there in clothes that could have come from the 1940s with a look of absolute bafflement on her face. So there is a huge contrast in where we were and where we are now, but it's not something that ever can be taken for granted. And I think you would recognise, Sue, you would say back to me that there is still much to be done and work in hand that we shall hope to continue and pursue.
I think there is, because I often tell the taxi driver story, which for me, a classic thing is if you want to know somebody's opinion, ask a taxi driver, because you get in and the door closes and they have you as a virtual prisoner between where you get on and where you get off. And if you ask a question, they're going to assume you want to know the answer. And I asked them what the relationship was like between the university and the town. And what he said to me, I found really quite dispiriting at the time. He said, university's not in Lancaster. And that said to me, oh, there's a distance. And they said it's up on a hill, which for me was another symbolism of isolation. And they're awfully clever people up there, but we don't really know what they do. And that sang to me that a distance had occurred between the city and the university. And I think that in the last 3 years or so, we've really tried to bring those two closer together. And you mentioned the Eden project. Of course, there are many other projects as well. But I do think that we're starting to make headway. Do you think I'm being optimistic, or do you think that's being realistic?
Well, I hope, no, you are right to be optimistic. But also we have to recognise that there is work to be done at all levels. There will come a time when people can no longer remember when there wasn't a university. And that will be a significant moment when already we're having the grandchildren of founding members of the university themselves going to university and going into jobs. And soon those different people will intermingle more than they are now. But you shouldn't ever take it for granted. I mean, I was 4 years in Oxford, and even there, in a wonderful setting that has a reputation worldwide, there are still people who say, having a university, a bit of a burden. So it's not a natural for people. And so things like tonight, our open days, we had an open day in the 1980s for the first time, and people were astonished because 17,000 people turned up, and we were totally awestruck. Yeah. We'd no idea. We hadn't arranged for that number. So
not enough tea to go around.
There is an interest and a hunger.
And I'm hoping that you approve of our new look library and the extensions to it. Tell us how important the library was in the early days and why you still think libraries are important.
Yes. It started out on Castle Hill, then it went to St Leonard's House and students began to use it there. And then it came its third location was here at Berwick. And it's been very fortunate that the university decided to put the library absolutely at the core. The Vice-Chancellor mentioned yesterday how in Cambridge the library is at a distance. Here it is central. And I think particularly during the last couple of years when we've had this ghastly pandemic and everyone has been separated from everyone, it's been wonderful having a place where people could congregate, which was open and accessible and welcoming and gave people a sense of purpose and location. So that experience mirrors the way in which the library is used. We have excellent staff here, and students come here because it's an excellent atmosphere. They are consulted about how it should run, what it should look like, and they very much appreciate it. Staff perhaps less so because they tend to use other resources these days, but for students it will always be important.
And you're now our Honorary Archivist.
Yes.
Tell us what that means.
Right. A university has its own history, and it's a young archive. It's only material from 60 years back. It starts with Lancashire County Council records and the requests that went to the University Grants Committee on a really very superficial little A4 booklet that would not pass muster for the smallest grant these days, but that brought the whole university here. And it's been, yes, next question.
So why do you think a corporate memory is important for a university?
Yes, indeed. Because Well, partly it's compliance and all the
But that's the boring stuff.
Yeah, all the boring
The
stuff.
really interesting. Why do we need to know about these
Why
things?
do we need to know? Why do students come and are absolutely fascinated by looking at documents from the beginning of the university? Why do staff ask questions? Why do topics get researched? I mean, obviously things like the anti-slavery questions have come up recently, but I get so many questions about how the place emerged, what it was about, who did what, how, particularly about origins. People are always fascinated about why things began, or even why things didn't happen, why we didn't get a medical school at first. Somebody came in and spent a whole morning investigating that question and came up with some good answers.
And of course, it's the thing as well, isn't it, that often the mistake is that archives are something that is dead and in the past. But of course, an archive is a living being. It's what you're laying down now that people will come to in the past.
I shall use that. Thank you, Sue. I'm looking at certain people to say, yes, that's a strong message and we have to pick that up. There is a problem with the digital age.
So tell me and advise me on somebody who's so heavily involved in the Eden Project. How do we set an archive? What should we do? Because we look to archives as a historical thing.
Right.
What do we need to do now?
Well, what you need to do is produce the documents that show the arguments, not the conclusions, but how you got there. What went wrong? Where were the missteps? Where were the changes of idea? How did the ideas emerge stronger and better as a result of debate? And so those planning documents, which people think are really, they're only drafts, well, actually, no, they're not. They're really very important. So please, yes, some photographs and some documents.
So those things that change, that shows the argument as it's progressing, are what are really important. That's so useful. The other thing that we have really come across is, of course, everybody wants to be the person who was responsible for the idea.
Yes.
So everybody wants to own it. It was me. And history writes whoever it was that was important.
Yes.
So for me, the archive is not just about the paperwork. It's about the voice of the people who had something to say.
Yes.
So that the digital archive, not just in terms of digitizing paper, but in terms of that recording people's thoughts and views are really important. Because some of the digital archives that we were using historically in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, looking at what people said 70 years ago compared to now, it's just priceless, utterly priceless.
Yes, and the attitudes. I mean, we have this lovely prospectus that talks about he as student. There's no she in there.
There will be.
And that's only 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And so we forget just how much changes so fast.
So just to close, Marion, can I ask, and this I think is really important for the way we go forward, was Lancaster University designed to be a civic university, a community university? And if not, do you think it can become one? And is it on the road to becoming one?
It regarded itself not so much as a civic university as a plate glass greenfield university. But yes, the way in which it was designed around the colleges and around the sense of place, with the Alexandra Square being at the core of it, the mix of functions, the human-sized buildings, so everything is designed not to strike awe, but to create a sense of welcome and accessibility, was all part of deliberate planning that came from our academic planning board, right the way through to the architects, to the Vice-Chancellor, our first Vice-Chancellor, very strongly, and to the founding students, who immediately, bless them, came in and within weeks were setting up societies, falling out with each other, starting to rewrite their constitutions, Oh,
It's what they're supposed to do, isn't it?
It was a very active place.
Marion, you know, it is always such a pleasure. Every time I sit down with you, I learn something new. And now that this dreadful pandemic is on its way, can we please have more coffee and cake?
That would be lovely.
That would be my pleasure too.
Thank you.
And moving on to our first live singing performance, I'd like to introduce you to Emily Rhodes, who is a singer and a songwriter, and a local singer and songwriter. She's recently played at the Lytham Wonder Hall Festival, as well as several solo gigs. Her latest single, Weirdos, has a great positive vibe to counteract some of those more negative aspects of our times in COVID, and the recent lockdowns which have made live music even more difficult. She calls herself a busker, a guitarist, a singer, and a songwriter, and that's a great way to start our musical diversity this evening. She's also a regular introducing artist and recently shortlisted for the BBC Introducing Radio 1 Live Lounge. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been listening to her all afternoon online. Please go and check out her music. Please give a lovely warm welcome to the most talented Emily Rhodes.
Spark the fire inside my heart, release the pain from deep within. It's all because my lungs are charred. Oh, I never seem to win. Seems now that something's changed. I've not felt no pain in days. I can't believe my eyes. No, I don't feel sane. Neon flames bursting in my brain fills me up with shame, but I still carry on just the same. Got it wrong too many times before, but now I'm moving on. I'm building a wall. Got the game been on the cards, laid out in front of me, watching so that I am scarred. But life here, I suppose. Oh, well, these days it seems that's how it goes. Seems now that something's changed. I've not felt no pain in days. I can't believe my eyes. No, I don't feel sane. Neon flames bursting in my brain fills me up with shame, but I still carry on just the same. Got it wrong too many times before, but now I'm moving on. I'm building a wall. I'm building a wall. I'm building a wall. I'm building a wall. Neon flames bursting in my brain fills me up with shame, but I still carry on just the same. You strike a match and it lights up my heart, lights up my heart. You strike a match, it lights up my heart. You strike a match and it lights up my heart, lights up my heart. You strike a match, it lights up my heart. You strike a match and it lights up my heart, lights up my heart. You strike a match, it lights up my neon flames bursting in my brain fills me up with shame, but I still carry on just the same. Got it wrong too many times before, but now I'm moving on. I'm building a wall. I'm building a wall. I'm building a wall. I'm building a wall. Thank you very much. So, I'm Emily, and I'm going to be playing a few songs for you tonight. This next one is my recent single, Weirdos, which is basically just about being different from everyone else and just getting along with it. Have you ever seen that way? You look at me and everyone so differently. Have you ever thought what it is like to be floating in outer space under the sun? I've always wanted to go there too, so grab my hand and I will go with you. I wonder what it's like on Jupiter and Mars, while away the weeks underneath the stars. I'm just a weirdo, and I think that you are too. We're both just weirdos escaping the world that lies beneath you. Do you ever feel like you're drifting out this world? Well, I surely do. Do you ever dream that you're underneath everything you never ever wanted to be, but it falls on you naturally? Wonder what it's like on Jupiter and Mars, while away the weeks underneath the stars. I'm just a weirdo, and I think that you are too. We're both just weirdos escaping the world that lies beneath you. I bet you never ever wanna go back there, where everything is fake and everyone just stops and stares. Oh, don't you worry, weirdo, it's just fine. Gladly it happens to me and you all of the time. I'm just a weirdo, and I think that you are too. We're both just weirdos escaping the world that lies beneath you. I'm just a weirdo, and I think that you are too. We're both just weirdos escaping the world that lies beneath you. This next song is a cover of one of my favourite artists at the moment, and this is Madison by Orla Gartland. Did every brain cell in my head, staring at my phone in bed. Don't even know what I was feeling as I stared up at the ceiling. My mother tells me I look tired, but what does she know? I'm clearly alright. Apart from every morning spent wishing that I was still sleeping. Yeah, I guess I could be happier. I suppose I could focus and think. And yes, I've been a regular at the bar where you drink, 'cause I like how you think. Madison, Madison, oh, I've been thinking how you been, how you been. I told you every single secret inside the silent. I needed you then, now I need you again, Madison. God, you wear that shirt so well. If you're not perfect, I can tell. Can I be your sister or your daughter or your house plant in the corner? Then I'd be happier, but I never have to think for myself. So can I call you? Can I see you? Oh, Madison, Madison, oh, I've been thinking how you been, how you been. I told you every single secret inside the silent. I needed you then, I need you again. And you said I could be happier. In that moment, I knew it was true. And the sadness is familiar. I don't know where you're at. Won't you please call me back? Oh, 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 Madison, Madison, oh, I've been thinking how you been, how you been. I told you every single secret inside the silent. Yes, I did silent. Madison, Madison, did you ever think about me just pouring my heart out? Every single secret inside the silent. I needed you then, I need you again, Madison. So I've got a couple more songs to do. This next one is another original. I wrote it about 3 years ago, and it's also about just standing out from the crowd and trying to be different from everyone else. I really hope you enjoy it. It's called Get Out of My Way. I wish that I could be myself. Just wanna be different, not like anyone else. It's quite difficult when you're standing in my way. Can tell me what to do or what I wanna say. Thoughts are rushing right through my mind. Seems I can let them out and being tortured inside. 'Cause thoughts are flowing right through my brain. Can tell me what to do or what I wanna say. You seem to care what car I drive. You don't care about what's inside. Now that's not right. That's not right. No, you can tell me what to do. Just because I'm different to you. So leave me alone. 'Cause I'm leaving today. Goodbye, get out of my way. Whatever clothes that I put on, it seems to bother you. Truth is you're small-minded, 'cause you judge someone by their shoes. Life is too short to waste your time complaining. Just keep moving forward is the moral I am saying. You seem to care what car I drive. pursue you. So leave me alone, 'cause I'm leaving today. Goodbye, get out of my way. Life is too short to waste your time complaining. Just keep moving forward is the moral I'm saying. I don't care what you think of me, I don't care about what you say. You seem to care what could drive. No, you don't care about what's inside. Now that's not right. That's not right. No, you can tell me what to do just because I'm different to you. So leave me alone, 'cause I'm leaving today. Goodbye, get out of my way. I'm leaving today. Goodbye, get out of my way. Thank you very much. This is going to be my last song, and it's hopefully going to be released in a few weeks, so look forward to that. It's called October. I really hope you enjoy it, and thank you very much for listening. A song by Colour Red on the radio brings a thought and wondering why I like the show. I think it's 'cause it's the something that I might be missing. Could it be real or am I just pretending? I've been hoping for a long time that it might work out and I'll have something to think upon instead of turning around. It was October when I found out I'm no longer on my own. In October I would sit down and get lost in the zone, writing down my hopes and my fears. I better speak now before they disappear. In October finally felt at home. Trying to put words together, but I'm not sure what to say. It's like a puzzle with a piece missing, it just doesn't seem sane. We need to take our first steps in order to start. How about when someone comes along and breaks your heart? It was October when I found out I'm no longer on my own. In October I would sit down and get lost in the zone, writing down my hopes and my fears. I better speak now before they disappear. In October I finally felt at home. Shake off the pain, throw it onto a page. When you word it poetically, the dread should all travel away. Using words only I think will put the puzzle back together again. It was October when I found out I'm no longer on my own. In October I would sit down and get lost in the zone, writing down my hopes and my fears. I better speak now before they disappear. In October I finally found October when I found out I'm no longer on
Emily, that was just amazing. I've been listening to you online this afternoon, and can I just say that online doesn't do any justice whatsoever to how you sound live. That was just incredible. You have an amazing talent, observationally, to watch things and then to be able to translate that into music and into lyrics. What an incredible talent. Local grown as well. And very, very best of luck with that new single when it comes out. And we'll all be listening and we'll all be rooting for you on it. It's a great pleasure to welcome my second guest to the couch, Dr. Sunita Abraham, who works part-time at the university and is involved in quite a number of local communities. Her current research focuses on issues of race, colonisation, decolonisation, and inequality. And we first met when she stormed into my office, and I use stormed in the nicest possible sense, but you did. You stormed into my office with a real mission because you had a focus on a particular person in this area that you felt had real skills that needed to be recognised, and they couldn't evidence those skills because they couldn't get the paperwork out of the country that they came from. And you were determined, you were a woman on a mission to make sure that somebody listened. Where does that sense of deep social justice, compassion, and caring come from?
I suppose it comes from my family background of growing up in India and having a father that was in the Indian Army and moved around. And so I saw India for what it is, the rural, the urban, the in-between. And I understood how it is for different people to be in circumstances where they don't have the kind of evidence to indicate that they are good at something, and it does require other people to join up things so that they can get the chances that they do deserve. So I think it's life in India and my experiences, certainly the education and what I've been involved with here in Lancaster.
Well, it was intoxicating, and I have to say we had great success with it, which was tremendous. And I know that we move forward in that phase, very, very clear moving forward with you pushing behind very, very fast at all of us to make sure that we pay the responsibilities that I think we have as a civic university. So tell us a little bit about your research and why it's so important today more than perhaps it's ever been.
So my current research looks into something which is called decolonization, and it is a loaded word, but very simply what it means is it's about power relationships. What counts as knowledge and whose knowledge counts. And decolonizing is helping people to understand that what we consider as knowledge today is very Western, Eurocentric, very much aligned with this part of the world, which is considered the main part of the world, forgetting the legacies of colonialism, slavery, and empire, which have in many ways erased or hidden histories of people, civilizations that are much older than what we had in Europe. For example, when the Aztecs were conquered by the Spaniards, the time preceding that, they had a civilization that you did not have in any part of Europe, the advancements that were there. But we don't look upon it or understand or talk about it in detail in schools so that we can help people to have a better understanding that these are not oppressed people that needed the help of Western people to get them to a particular point, but they had amazing civilizations, and they made scientific discoveries, and they had made fantastic contributions to art, music, and society, but they were forgotten or deliberately overlooked. The transatlantic slavery is another example of that. So you're not erasing history, but you're bringing to light histories that have been overlooked for very deliberate reasons. And so it's that challenging the idea of whose knowledge has counted as knowledge and why other forms of knowledge have not been considered important, deliberately overlooked because of colonialism, slavery, and empire.
And we might not have a very long history in terms of Lancaster University. We've been hearing about it. So some of our archives probably don't shed much light on the subject. But Lancaster, of course, has a very long and checkered history in this sort of area. How do we manage the balance between our past and our current understanding? Because we've seen a lot of activity recently, whether it's in the Black Lives Matter movement or whether it's in what we've seen with Cecil Rhodes and such things. How do we manage that to make sure that we don't actually make a situation worse, but we improve it? Because it has to be a very delicate balancing act, I would have thought.
It is. It's about power relationships. So you're going to get somebody to feel uncomfortable in order for change to happen. But it's to do that, as you said, in a very sensitive way. So I guess the idea of how you go about making that kind of change is to work alongside the community and help them to have a better understanding of what the legacies of slavery, colonialism, and empire are. So here in Lancaster, we've been working, I'm associated with a group called Lancaster Black History, and we've been, because of Black Lives Matter protest, bringing it to the fore, come together as a group to do something about how we can challenge systemic racism through education. So that's one way in which change can be brought about. And the other way is when we're in university settings, looking at our students and seeing what they're doing. So here in Lancaster University, we have a campaign group of students called Why Is My Curriculum White? And they've been at the forefront of, before staff have been involved in it in significant ways, asking why is it that our curriculum does not have many non-white people involved in it. But it's not just the curriculum. They also ask about not seeing themselves reflected in the proportion of staff that are black and minority ethnic group or people of color. So there are many different ways in which there is progress happening, but there is a long way to go to get to where we are. So Lancaster University itself is built on land that was enclosed by Joshua Hind, who was a slave from a very prominent slave trading family. So we need to be acknowledging that those links. And I've just been working with various groups as part of the Slavery Family Trees research, community research, and 4 of the students have been presenting at an earlier workshop, and one of them has talked about Sugar House, which is, again, the nightclub of the university, but it has, sugar doesn't grow in Lancaster. So to have something called Sugar House is linking that to transatlantic slavery. But if we don't talk about what happened on those plantations, what happened on the passage in the triangular trade, which took enslaved people from the west coast of Africa on a journey to the Caribbean where they were sold, but many, many died on the way. If we don't get people to understand what actually happened on those ships, then we won't get them to change their minds. So there are many different ways that we could work on this and help people to have a better understanding of the past. And the historian, Professor Catherine Hall, has put it the best way. She calls it reparative history. It is about repairing history by acknowledging what happened, bringing it to light, helping people to understand it better, and in doing so transform the future.
We were fortunate in having Melinda Elder write a book, so there was some recognition, so that I hope laid the way for your work when you came along.
Yes, Melinda Elder's work has been instrumental in this because no one else has written about Lancaster's history as she has. And
was this the book? Was it called The Sugar House? Or
no. So
was a
her
book.
book is about Lancaster's link to
Okay.
transatlantic slavery, and hers is the definitive book on that. And she's done a lot more work alongside us as a community group, and also other local historians have been working with us on that. So we are building on knowledge that exists, but Black Lives Matter process has really pushed it to the fore.
And we hear a lot as academics about decolonising a curriculum. I think there are quite a few people who are a little bit mystified how you go about decolonising a curriculum. So I'm going to ask you very simply about that, because I'm sure it's very, very complicated. But where does the library sit in that? What's the importance of our library and our archive in relation to that decolonisation?
I think everything in the library has an underlying colonial mindset attached to it. The way we do indexing, the way we do procurement, the way we do publishing. These are tied to houses in the Western world. Your rankings, all of this is generated in the West, and there is very little recognition of fantastic tests written in native languages or journals that come out of that. So and the library here in Lancaster has been really interested and involved in wanting to bring about that change. They've been involved not just in initiatives here on campus in relation to decolonizing, but they've also reached out to community groups like Lancaster Black History and supported them on their Slavery Family Trees research project. So we've been in touch very much with you, Marion, in relation to that, but also working with historians here, because many of the academics who are here at Lancaster University are part of Lancaster Black History Group.
Fascinating. Now, on another side, but not unrelated, of course, is the work that you do with asylum seekers and refugees. And I wondered if you might like to talk to us about the particular challenges that perhaps people have coming into this region, but coming into the UK in general. And what more can we be doing to help? Because, of course, we've all seen the situation coming out of Afghanistan in the last few weeks. But, of course, it's much, much wider than that.
I think the biggest challenge is the way currently our immigration systems work, and the new police bill that's coming in and the immigration bills that's coming in, because we need to help people to understand the truth about a lot of what's gone behind that bill. But also, if they understand the legacies of slavery, colonialism and empire, they would much better understand why Afghanistan is where it is now. But if we don't help people to understand that background history of a tremendously proud nation with amazing history and architecture being reduced to where it is now, that how do we enable the communities to better engage with them as equals, but not as someone that they need to pity, but treating them as equals, and understanding that Britain's involvement in Afghanistan, for example, in Iran, for example, in Iraq, for example, can explain where, to an extent, why those countries are facing what they are facing now. And you can see that even in the Middle East, other places, and in parts of Africa. So the big challenge for us here in Lancaster and Morecambe, City of Sanctuary, which is the umbrella group that works with asylum seekers and refugees here, that I'm part of through two different groups that I'm associated with, our biggest challenge, and I really would hope that anyone who's listening to this and has a house that you traditionally rent out to students, would you consider renting it out via Lancaster and Morecambe City of Sanctuary and the Lancaster City Council, Lancashire County Council, for Afghan families? So we in this part of the world have agreed to have 5 Afghan families. We've only been able to accommodate 1 because we do not have housing for the other 4. So we've had a landlord from Lancaster being one of the first people to open up her doors and say, instead of letting out to students, I'm going to consider this as an important point and a way for me to engage with this topic of refugees and supporting them, or better understanding where they come from. And I think if we have more of that kind of understanding, there's tremendous goodwill. There's great ways of befriending. All of that information is available on Lancaster Morecambe City of Sanctuary website, Facebook, and all the different groups that work with it. So there's, you can volunteer, you can donate, you can help people through translations, you can teach English. There's a variety of ways. You can teach people to ride, cycle. There's so many different ways in which you can befriend and support asylum seekers and refugees.
Because the headlines very recently suggested that about a third of councils in England and Wales have actually come forward to offer spaces for Afghan refugees in particular. And so I approached our local council to ask what we were doing and how many families we were taking in. And I was actually quite relieved to know we are one of those councils that is very, very positive about helping. And they had talked about 10 families. But I'm now a little despondent in thinking that we were going to be able to help 10 families. And you're telling me that all we've been able to find is a place for one. So there's a lot more for us to do. Lancashire, I always think, is having a big, warm and welcoming heart. It maybe needs to get a little bigger, would you think?
I think Lancashire has the heart to an extent, but it's, I guess in a sense, different organizations and groups having more people getting on board with the idea that it's all right to be able to do that. There's no repercussions with this. And it's a safe way to do this. So it might be 5, 10 or 20 families that we can welcome, but if we don't have houses to let, all the goodwill in the world is not going to help.
So how do we educate? How do we get that message out? That Lancashire is open, that we've got the facilities, we've got it. How do we educate people to open their doors?
I think the biggest thing is awareness. So this morning, right up until 3 o'clock this afternoon, I was in the Lake District at Brockholes with 90 women from the East and the West as part of a group that I'm involved in called East Meets West that works with women asylum seeker refugees and refugees and their families, with the idea that if you work alongside and you share things with people, you are going to be able to kind of break those barriers because we're meeting as equals. And while we were having, we'd asked everybody to bring their own picnics because of COVID. You can't do the traditional sharing, which a lot of these families coming from Middle East and Africa would like to share food. We were all there sitting with these young children around us, and a gentleman walked up to us and he said, "What is happening here?" And we said, "This is what we are doing." And he said, "I am amazed because I've been thinking about this morning, and it's just like an answer to prayer. I've seen that you can achieve this, you can bring about change, but it's small, slow steps. We need to do other things in order to be able to bring that awareness, and that could involve higher levels of government having policies that enable local councils and county councils to do, be funded better, to provide the kind of support, but also to have policies at the national level that are humane and that I guess in a sense treat people and understand why, the truth behind why lots of people leave those situations. It's not just about economic migration. It is about fleeing persecution, violence and war, increasingly climate change.
You are an inspiration and you are utterly intoxicating. You really are. And I can't think of anybody better at the forefront of moving this area forward. And, the university is so proud of all of the work that you do, but there is, of course, so much work to do. But thank you for joining us this evening. It's been just such a pleasure, as always.
You're very welcome, and it's not just me. I work with groups.
Yes, I know. But it also takes many voices to come together. Into our next performance. So it's a great pleasure to introduce Scott Millington, who is a local singer, songwriter, and player of so many instruments I almost can't list them. But at the end of the day, they do include mandolins and banjos. And let's face it, you can never have too much of a good banjo. He's apparently a lover of travelling and cats and experimental cooking, but I'm hoping that they aren't particularly linked. And this year he's released a new album, which is called Waymarks. And I have to say that out of this, the one that I loved the most was Coffee Dreaming, because I very much related to that, sitting over a cup of coffee and dreaming about what's going on with the world. So I'm hoping that it might be on tonight's playlist. But Scott, whilst you're at it, where's the signpost?
It's at the bottom of Ingleborough.
Ah, there you go. I knew he would know. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, can you give us a very warm welcome for Scott Milligan, who also is playing at the Lancaster Music Festival this October. So please make sure that you support that local festival as well. Scott, it's over to you.
Thank you very much. Evening, everybody. Dark nights are drawing in, doubt setting in like rain, boats sailing out to sea, lights on the horizon. I want to breathe a different air, feel the sun from a cloudless sky. Hesitation keeps me here, afraid I'm going nowhere. Cover me in love and light, give me land and sea, earth and sky. Give me a compass point to guide me home to the place I need to go. Snow clings to rolling hills, trucks kick up jets of spray, iron bridges spanning voids, and roads that lead you somewhere. I'm heading through those rolling hills, I'm going, but I'd like to stay. But the skyline's calling me down the road to somewhere. Cover me in love and light, give me land and sea, earth and sky. Give me a compass point to guide me home to the place I need to go. All the things I should have done, all the things I could have done. If I had, where would I be? Is there still a chance to see? Cover me in love and light, give me land and sea, earth and sky. Give me a compass point to guide me home to the place I need to go. Cover me in love and light, give me land and sea, give me earth and sky. Be the guiding star that leads me home to the place I need to go. Thank you very much. That was the road to somewhere. That's better. I could hear it, and I could hear it slightly out, and I can't stop. This is Tree in the Winter. hard like a tree in the winter, black and frozen, prone to splinter. Elements of life in suspension. Are you cause or prevention? Oh, make me warm again. Let the river in me flow again. I can't feel anything now. Can't let my God let you in now. How can you help if you're the problem? Trying doors, but you can't unlock them. Clear the windows of my soul again. I can't feel you, I can't heal you, I can't deal with you. Hard like a tree in the winter, black and frozen, prone to splinter. Thank you very much. Just change guitars. This next song has a story behind it. We love a good story. But this story is rooted in Lancaster's history. And get a strap on. In a tower in Lancaster Castle, there's one of the oldest surviving pieces of graffiti. And come on. There you are. It says, John Bailey, April the 15th, 1741, committed for kissing by Brindle. And by it, there's a picture of a tulip and a very well carved violin. But nobody knows who John Bailey was, and nobody knows who he kissed. Now, in the parlance of the day, kissing the tulip and having a fiddle, well, I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions on that one. But I wrote this song for my band, the Grievous Angels. We took part in the Documenting Dissent project a few years ago and recorded a small album for that. And we recorded it as a duet. We were trying to figure out who John Bailey was and how he got there. So this is an imagined conversation with John Bailey. It's called Committed for Kissing, the Day John Bailey Died. Tell me all your secrets, I promise not to tell. And I'll tell you where I was on the day that Pompeii fell. One early spring night, we played by candlelight, making music till our heads began to swim. Our eyes met over Telemann, and knew I'd only love one man. Every note I would play would be for him. Tell me all your secrets, your trust I hope to earn, and I'll tell you where I was on the day that London burned. I swore unto my lover that we'd remain undiscovered, for our love could never see the light of day. But the night of April 4th, the parting kiss by the door, Brindle came, took my liberty away. Now I carve into the prison wall a coded message to them all, with a symbol of the music that we made. 300 years have come to pass, my message lives on under glass, and I remain undiscovered to this day. So tell me all your secrets and promise you won't lie, and I'll tell you where I was on the day John Bailey died. Thank you very much. Change back. There was something a little bit high wire about tuning on stage. Now this next song was inspired by a painting by an Australian artist called Prudence Flint, and it's called Green Tea Ice Cream. And I have to thank Sunita Abraham for this, because she posted the painting on Twitter while I should have been working. Aha, we are on. Indian summer in November, sun streaming in through the blinds, humming a tune I half remember. It's too nice out there to be inside. Stefan's painting his house, and Dolly's at the sewing machine. Jeanette, she's watching TV on her couch, and everyone's busy but me. And oh, a day like this, it feels like a dream. Sitting on a bench by the ocean, seagulls and green tea ice cream. Judy's on the counter at the corner store, giving out gossip with the change. She says, this time last year, remember, it was -4. You'd like to have drove us all insane. But now I'm looking at the house on the shoreline and wishing that it belonged to me. I could sit out on the porch with a glass of wine and watch the moon kiss the sea. Maybe there's someone out there dreaming the same dream, sitting on a bench by the ocean, seagulls and green tea ice cream. But While you're out there chasing love and perfection, there's a voice deep inside that's trying to catch your attention. There's a chill now in the sunshine. I never thought to bring a coat. Think I'll sit out with some wine tonight. The moon and I will drink a toast. And maybe there's someone out there picturing the scene. A woman on a bench by the ocean, seagulls and green tea ice cream. Maybe she'll paint me for all the world to see. Sitting on the bench by the ocean, seagulls and green tea ice cream. Green tea ice cream. Thank you very much. This is the last song of the evening for me. This is the song Sue was referring to. And this was written back in the days before the franchised coffee experience became a thing, when they were a relative novelty on the high streets. But this one was inspired by a certain coffee shop in Glasgow near Central Station. They had a whopping great sofa in the window where you could sit and watch the world go by. And so this is called Coffee Dreaming. Sitting on the sofa in the coffee bar down the street, drinking a grande mocha with chocolate and whipped cream, looking out the window at the people passing by. Then your eyes meet mine and I break into a smile. Then I start coffee dreaming, you are by my side. I'm coffee dreaming that I'll live another life. Coffee dreaming of someone I'll never meet. I'm coffee dreaming. You're tall and dark, dressed in black with big red boots. You got deep blue eyes and a smile that cuts me through. We walk around the city and we talk away the day. And then I take you home and you ask if you can stay. Coffee dreaming that you were by my side. I'm coffee dreaming that I'll live another life. Coffee dreaming of someone I'll never meet. I'm coffee dreaming. So you stay the night and we make love all night. Never known coffee tastes so good. Oh. The problem with dreaming never does come true. And I'd be more than happy to dream a life with you. Now my coffee's cold and the steam has ceased to rise. You're halfway down the street when I open up my eyes. But I'm still coffee dreaming, you are by my side. Still coffee dreaming, can I live this other life? Coffee dreaming of someone I wish I'd meet. I'm coffee dreaming, still coffee dreaming. Thank you all for listening. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Scott, and you've made an old lady very happy. Thank you for Coffee Dreaming. And it's the last track on your new album, which is, as you can see, called Waymarks. So thank you so much indeed for that. I feel as if I've known you forever because I've spent the afternoon watching you playing in your attic, if you get my drift. Moving on very swiftly from there to my next guest. Last time we met, he was interviewing me, and I love a good table turn. every now and again. So there's a certain sense of power shift here that he's not quite sure what's coming. So it's a pleasure to introduce Ian Dewar. Ian is a Lancaster man, and he's a lead chaplain, and I have to read this because it's the most ridiculous title. He's a lead chaplain at University Hospitals of Morecambe Bay NHS Foundation Trust. Don't you think somebody could have made that a little bit more snappy? I think they could. He's also the founder of and the project lead for Lancaster Health Festival, a trustee of Morecambe Bay Food Bank, and a member of Sustainable Food City. And of course, as you would expect, he's got his own allotment. Ian, I'm not sure how nervous you're feeling, given how much of a hard time
Can I just
you
say,
gave me.
I'm on the couch with the dame. I'm quite happy.
Okay, there's
One for
nothing
the
more we're going to
memoirs.
say about that. I'm going to take us to something a little bit more serious, because otherwise the evening could descend, and that's
Yeah, we
never
don't wanna do
good.
that. We don't wanna
Never
do
good
that.
with a
No, that's
cleric. Tell me a little bit about what it means to be lead chaplain at the hospital. Where's the difference?
It's a brilliant job, basically. I mean, being a lead chaplain allows me to run a team of chaplains or team of volunteers, to engage with people often at the most vulnerable moment in time. As we're in a university setting, it's probably worth saying as well, it's one of those great opportunities to test what comes out of university. So, for example, Linda Woodhead's done quite a lot of research, who's connected with the university in the past, on changes in religion, and it's quite interesting to read things like the Kendall Project or the paper she wrote on, people kind of not giving up on belief, but having kind of mixtures of beliefs, and say, is that true in the bedside when you meet people? So it's a fantastic privilege to be able to do that, and just a great job. And the thing I love most about being a chaplain, and certainly being lead chaplain, is the freedom you get. You can go anywhere. We often joke, if I put the collar on, I could just walk in the operating theatre, nobody, it's a chaplain, don't bother about it, it's fine, let's get on with it. So, and it is that freedom to engage and to talk, to the domestics and the porters about the footy, to take the stillbirth funerals the next day, and to be on the ethics committee the next day, and to just be out on the wards. That's what I love about it. It's great.
And that collar that you talk about does give that sense of trust, and a trust when people are at their most vulnerable is extremely comforting. Are there times when you feel that perhaps it gets in the way, rather than necessarily being something that enhances the relationship you might have, whether that's with patients or with staff or with families as they're coming in?
Yeah, it's interesting, really. I mean, I've been through periods where I've thought that. I've reached a conclusion it doesn't now, because the advantage of wearing this is that even if people think you stand for something that you don't stand for, you've got a starting place. They'll threat. So I went in on one of our wards the other day, and I was taking communion. It's back on the wards now, and I was offering it. And my name is Ian Dewar. I'm the chaplain. The clues are there. Look, and somebody was really quite sharp with me over something, and chucked out stuff. So I said, "What are you reading now, then?" Because they were on some iPad or whatever. And I was able to build a link, simply because that gave me a clue as to what they thought about me, really. So you just got to use everything to your advantage. That's all there is to it. I mean, for some people it does. They've had some really bad experiences at the church, but people have had bad experiences of all sorts of institutions, really. And you've just got to take that and roll with it.
What have you seen change over the last 18 months? Because it's really been an exceptional time in the NHS.
Yeah.
What's your sort of distilled down views?
We're tired.
Yeah.
It's the bottom line, really. I mean, I think talking to staff, you've got to be careful. I think we took out this narrative about the NHS is collapsing. It'll probably grind to a halt more than collapse, I think, because the sheer kind of numbers coming to it and the expectations placed on it. But you can't be too dramatic, because we're not the first generation to have a pandemic. You've got to be realistic. But you've got to be balanced, and it has been exhausting. When I interviewed one of our nurses last year for a remembrance service we did, similar to this, live streamed on YouTube. And the exhausting thing for her was that you would have patients who would come to you who you thought, yeah, okay, they're elderly, they've got underlying health conditions, but we can do something, we'll treat them. And you start treating them, and then they get COVID, and 6 hours later they're dead. And it was that intensity, I think, that kind of got to people. And people are just drawing breath at the moment, really. But the rest of the world seems to be going back to normal. We're almost still in lockdown, so you can't go on a ward without PPE, and those are the kind of things, and it's that duality. And most people I speak to are expecting a tough autumn and winter, because we didn't have much flu last year. Everyone was,
which is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those masks work.
Absolutely, they do. But nobody's quite sure what's coming this year, so we'll see how that goes.
In my real world, as a forensic scientist, but also as an anthropologist, one of the things that I've noticed and missed the most is, anyone will tell you who knows me, I'm a huggy person.
Yeah.
And I think people have really missed that physical connection that they can have with people. What do you think the impact on that lack of connection and physicality has on us as a human species? Yeah, that wasn't a question that was on the list, was it?
No, it wasn't. No. But it's a really good question, and it's a very profound question, because it touches on something that we're bad at in society anyway, which is understanding rituals in terms of physicality and touch. This came home to me many years ago when I was a couple of months living in Russia, and so the way they dealt with each other in terms of greeting each other and physicality. And I think it's probably done a lot of damage, because, and we'll take a lot of recovery from, because ultimately even a handshake is intimate. Do you know what I mean? And that's really kind of important. Certainly for us as chaplains, one of the most difficult things is when it's the end of life, the accepted rituals of laying your hand on somebody's head or holding their hand whilst you pray with them, whatever, has kind of disappeared. I mean, you're doing it through gloves. It's not quite the same thing, but it just doesn't work, you know. So I think that's going to take some recovery from, really. And I think one of the things that it will affect us with is a degree of nervousness about how we deal with each other. I'd be interested to see how that kind of works out over time.
And do you think the biggest challenge facing you as a lead chaplain at the moment is the morale and the tiredness, or is there something more? Is there a bigger challenge?
There are two major challenges, I think, really. There is the tiredness and the morale, and it's getting around and seeing people and picking up conversations and seeing how they're doing. But the other challenge that hasn't gone away, but it's been highlighted by the pandemic, is when are we going to take population health seriously? Because actually, we all know the major issue is not people coming to the health service, it's stopping them in the first place. You know, we need to get people walking, we need to get people eating well, we need to supply decent food in our culture. But all those things are incredibly important. We kind of don't do that, really. And it just, the issues have not gone away. They've just been highlighted, and we need to have honest conversation about them. I mean, if I'm truthful about it, I wouldn't mind seeing a Royal Commission on the National Health Service. Because it would be interesting, because all you've got at the moment is two parties chucking stuff at each other in the NHS as a football. They actually managed it with the benefit system. Universal credit, most people don't actually realise, was a cross-party venture. And my wife was working in working pensions at the time. And we can argue the toss about how much money you get on universal credit. You can argue the toss about whether it was really slow getting going, but it was a tidying up that made things simpler. And we need something like a Royal Commission on the NHS to say, well, what are we supposed to do with this thing that's been around for 70-odd, 80-odd years? And, we don't live in that world anymore.
No, it's a behemoth that has grown in a sort of organic way, with sort of slightly untidy.
Absolutely messy bits everywhere. I think I'm actually correct in saying the only organisation that employs more people than we do is the Chinese Red Army. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just,
But it's been at the core, hasn't it?
It has,
of people's hearts, minds, and health over the last 18 months. But you are the light and the driving force behind the Festival of the Lost Art of Living, which is where we met up. Tell us all about that festival, because this is so you, and it is so Lancaster that it's just brilliant.
Well, I was just walking through Lancaster one day and thinking, we've got this big problem. We have these big campaigns about population health, and everybody in the trust knows about them, but nobody outside knows about them. Well, what do you do about that then? What do we do well in Lancaster? Well, we've got this fantastic music festival, every year. Why can't we have a health festival? So we had to go just starting off, and I think year one we engaged with 500 people, year two 2,000, year three 4,000, and then we hit a pandemic. But I mean, let's slow things up. But we're back on the march. We're moving again now, which is great. And we ran one in the pandemic and one again this year. I called it Lost Art of Living for a very simple reason. Lovely Scottish connection for you. My grandfather was born in Wishaw, and the family all originally come up from near Loch Tay.
The name like Dewar.
Absolutely, the clues are there, aren't they? That's right. It's like wearing this, really. That's it. But I remember when I was a wee boy, he'd go out for a walk most nights with his mate Vince, and they'd walk around and they'd have a smoke and they'd talk about the GGs or whatever, and where the money was going and what life was like. And he'd come back an hour later, and that was it. And he'd chew the fat. And what struck me is that we've got in this absolutely balmy situation now where everyone's getting excited about social prescribing, and you go to the GPs and say, what you need to do, mate, is go walking 3 times a week. How the heck did we get to the situation where you've got to prescribe going for a walk? It's mad. And we've lost the art just to walk out and to talk to each other, to have a conversation, and we have to turn it into something kind of important. Now, I get it if somebody can't afford a gym membership and it's good for them to go there. I can see the kind of logic, but there is something that we've lost in our culture when you can't actually just say, should we just go for a walk and a chat? Why can't we do that? So we're looking at the lost art of living, and lost art of living is other things. I mean, you're going to press my buttons now. I'm really on with this one, but we go through the food in our culture. We don't have food, do we? We have factory mess most of the time that's churned out. I mean, I remember going through the 70s, everyone would tell you what was bad to eat. I grew up in a typical Lancaster working class family. It was meat and 2 veg, and that was it. Beans on toast if money was a bit tight. That's it, right? I'm not ill. I'm healthy, I'm okay. And yet in the 70s and 80s, we persuaded ourselves, but having meat and 2 veg is really, really bad for you. What you needed was Vesta curry or something, do you know what I mean? And now our diet's all over the place, and we've got all sorts of illness coming from it. So we've got to deal with these issues and get back on with them.
Because food is so very often at the core of everything we do. And Sunita will know that when you're bringing communities together,
yeah, absolutely.
It's the sharing of food, it's the cooking of food, it's often the mothers and the women who are at the core of that. And I know we've seen that in some of the communities. Why do we have food banks?
Really good question. There are all sorts of complex reasons around that. But by and large, I think we have... What have we done? We've moved to a system where I think we have undercut our industrial base, so we don't have people doing low-paid jobs where they can get some self-respect to maybe have a top-up from. We have moved to a system where we funnel people who haven't got a lot into certain areas, and therefore you create kind of downward spiralling areas. We don't have a decent enough benefit system in terms of the money that people have to live off. And what we do to areas, and I think it's a really quite crucial factor in why we have food banks, I mean, I take this on board, is we do things, dangerous to say this in university, but we say the best thing you can do in life is get a good education, go to university, leave home and go to a city and get a good job. In short, we bleed talent. And so we leave poor areas, and there are large swathes of this country that become poorer and poorer because we bleed talent, and we need to turn that around and face up to ourselves. What's wrong with stopping at home? What's wrong with going to your local university? What's wrong with making a difference to your community? And those are the kind of things that...
And you're a Lancaster man, born and bred.
Yeah.
Have you seen that Lancaster community change in your lifetime? Is it changing for the better, the worse, or just changing? Community spirit.
Yeah, it's changed phenomenally. And it's kind of, I guess it's kind of mixed, really. I mean, my nan used to take in students when they first arrived here. That was a bit of spare cash, get them in as a lodger, really. In some respects, it's changed for the better. I mean, you were quite right pointing out earlier that Lancaster was a northern working class town on its uppers, basically. That's where we were. 2 major employers, Williamson's and Storey's, were going down, though I started my working life down at Williamson's, Nairns as it was then, in their export department. So it's been a huge boon. I think those who have stayed, who've been to the university and stayed, made their lives here, they've made a big difference to the area, and that they're the positives. But actually, when I talk to my parents, both of whom fortunately are still around, there are 2 Lancasters still. And I don't know how you bridge that gap. There needs to be some way of doing it. And that's not just Lancaster. That's our country as a whole. And one of the questions we've got to tease out, and it is, why is it in the last 30, 40, 50 years we've ended up with a demonisation of the working class? If you're working class, you're bigoted, racist, whatever, and they're difficult questions to face up to. I mean, the classic example would be my grandfather was as red as you come when it comes to politics, and we're a 3rd or 4th generation Labour family. I flirted with the Tories at one stage, and thought, don't like that, and went back to my roots. But if I look at my grandfather, my parents, they wouldn't recognise the current party that we have, and there is something.
But would
about
they
this project-
recognise the community? So has the community changed?
Changed hugely. They still recognise it to some extent because the streets are still there.
It's physicality. It's the people.
It's physicality is really important. You know, and can the neighbours still get on well? But I think the difficulty is stuff has changed largely because of national patterns and trends. So I think that, you know, one of the most disastrous things we did in this country was sell off council housing.
But is there enough heart and space to overcome what might be a national policy, but to turn it into the local or the community drive that changes it? Because I think of some of the work that Sunita does, and that you do, that really is pushing boundaries, that doesn't necessarily follow a government directive.
Yes, there is. And I actually think that is our only hope, really, because, you know, we're not going to get anything nationally. You know, basically.
But we're going to have levelling up. We're going to have focusing on place.
Okay.
I'm an optimist.
You know, we've got to do it ourselves. We've got to rediscover drive and energy ourselves and make changes ourselves, because nobody's going to do it for us. You know, we've got to. So if we want a decent food culture, well, we've got to set up systems where we have a decent food culture. You know, if we want, you know, great places for people to enjoy themselves, well, we've got to make sure we protect our green areas. It's kind of down to us to do it, and we've got to do that.
And is there a role for the university there?
Yeah, there is, because actually decent study, decent academic research opens up areas of conversation and backs initiatives and ideas and gives us some direction. You know, education is a fantastic thing. I mean, I think one of the things I think it's far better in Scotland than in England is that basically you can get a decent education if you go to the right school, etc., etc. In Scotland, if you're good enough, you're in, son, aren't you? That's basically it. And there's a much more balanced view, I think, in Scotland. You know, but universities are important places to do important research, and we've got to find ways of taking that into the public domain, really.
And, you know, as we were talking with Marion earlier, the relationship between the town and the gown is important. And
it
we
is
need to
important.
strengthen it.
It's important, but it's got to go deeper than kind of those high-level links.
Yes.
That's the crucial thing,
and
that's the knack, and that's the hard work. How do you turn that and make it kind of, to use a theological term, how do you incarnate it? How do you get it rooted in us all?
We're out of time.
Same, it's better than the sermon, this.
Well, we're out
Well,
of
I
time,
think I'm enjoying
but
it.
We have one more question.
Oh,
and
go on.
It is
Go
the
on.
most
important question.
What's growing well on the allotment right now?
Radishes.
There you go.
And my tomatoes.
Ian, it's
Thank you very
always
much
a
indeed.
pleasure.
Yeah.
It is always a pleasure. Thank you. Moving on now to our final musical interlude. And I'd like to introduce you to Jay Blackburn, who is a singer and a songwriter from Heysham. You can tell I'm local. I can now call it Heysham, not Heysham, which I think I did for about the first 6 months before I had it beaten into me. And Jay has released his debut EP back in 2013, which was called Ghosts. Since then, he's achieved huge success, including being played on BBC introducing radio stations. His new album, In This Old World, has just been introduced, and you can download it on Bandcamp, either for the download or for CD. So what I'm hoping, and having listened to it, I've been doing a lot of listening to music this afternoon. I've got a real hope that darker shade of blue, it might be, I'm going for not quite the hat trick, but I'm hoping that if I put in a plug now, then maybe that's going to appear on tonight's repertoire. We'll see whether I'm lucky. But it is a beautiful song, and I do advise that everybody have a look and listen to Jay's music, because it is quite incredible. Accompanying Jay tonight, we have Craig on violin, we have Lucy singing, and we have Niamh on keyboard. So please give it up, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to Jay.
Thank you, Sue. Good evening, all. So I think Scott sang Road to Somewhere, did you? I'm going to sing Somewhere Down the Road. So I must have had a similar thought process.
chasing down our dreams upon the wind that once would blow in all directions. Precious time has no voice to lose, only memories to pick and choose from. Those just tossed aside, worth nothing more than I could ever give. You gotta keep on keeping on, even though the road is long. You gotta keep on keeping on, even if all hope is gone. I'll be staring down the storm that comes upon the waves and towards your ever after. And I will fight like no tomorrow to feel your love again. So keep on shining in the dark, lighting up the sky all over our ever after. I'll keep on running through the crossfire to see your face again. Gotta keep on keeping on, even though the road is long. Gotta keep on keeping on, keep on keeping on. Just keep on keeping on. Just gotta keep on keeping on, keeping on. See you somewhere down the road.
Something like that. Thank you very much. So that was the opening track off my new album. This is another tune off it. It's been very well supported by local radio, Beyond Radio. Thanks to those guys for your support. Little plug there. This is called Build a Dream. How we like it?
Maybe we could build ourselves a pretty dream, prettiest dream that this world has ever seen. Maybe we could reach the point of no return, find Elysium and watch the fires burn. Maybe we will dance the night away and let this dream unfold. Let me love you once again, my love will keep you from the cold. Maybe we could build ourselves a pretty dream, far away from here, a brand new scene to see, a coastal scene all shiny gold, pink and blue, a summer sunset burning let's build a dream. Ooh, gonna build a dream. Ooh, let's build a dream.
Thank you very much. Cheers. So she wanted the hat trick, didn't you, Sue? And coming in at number 3
Yes.
is the very song, Dark Shade of Blue. Hope you like it. Oh, sorry, yeah. Mr. Craig Marrett, everyone. Sorry. A bad habit of doing that.
She's been in love before. You can see the birds flow. You can see it in her beautiful big blue eyes. You can see that her heart's been out alone. You can see that her heart's been out on loan. You're crying out all you can. Stand up, be a man, and hold on to love that you once knew. The other way's a darker shade of blue. The other way's a darker shade of blue. And if she ever went away, someone no longer have any say. I never saw the way until she came along. And I love her till my last breath's long gone. The other way's a darker shade of blue. The other way's a darker shade of blue. She's the one who made me who I am. For there are no ends or graces to her soul. She's the one who made me who I am. Until the days that we grow old. The other way's a darker shade of blue. The other way's a darker shade of blue. The other way's a darker shade of blue. Until the days that we grow old.
Thank you very much. So this one has a little bit of a story to it. about 30 years ago, this guy rocked up in Morecambe off a train and went to meet his mate, who he was going to stay with for a couple of weeks. And he went to meet him in the Skirton Hotel when that used to be open, and walked in, and it was like a Wild West moment. Everyone stopped to turn around, and who's this stranger? And turned out to be a right pleasant bunch, and drinks were spilt, and good crack was had. And 30 years later, the guy's still here. And this is called A Stranger. I really like it. Stranger's me, by the way.
Find a new place, trying to find his own way. Cold streets, gravel crunching underfoot. Finds a boozer full of faces, thought he'd run right out of luck. Then everybody said, hey man, what's your name, son? Where'd you come from? And are you gonna stay around? Are you gonna stay? Told the faces I'm a humble troubadour, a gentleman with no more work, just singing songs of love. Round the table the drinks swelling, poured and spilled, telling stories of fortune and the day's work down the mill. Then everybody says, hey man, what's your name, son? Where'd you come from? Now you're gonna stay around. Are you gonna stay? Told the faces I'm a humble troubadour, a gentleman with no more worth, just singing songs of love. Everybody says, hey man, what's your name, son? Where'd you come from? And are you gonna stay around? Are you gonna stay? Are you gonna stay? Are you gonna stay?
Thank you very much. So yeah, these are a few songs off this wonderfully produced piece of work, if I say so myself. And I've got a few with me. If anyone would like to part with £10 and help fund my next project, you would be more than welcome. So come see me afterwards if you would like to buy one. Otherwise, it's available on download on Bandcamp as well for those online watching. And we're going to do another one from this album, and it's called Echoes. One, two, three, four.
Catch the evening tide, sail away from here, away from this mad world, to distant sunny climes. We can take the time to really know just what's going on. All the echoes round my mind, echo round my soul, echo round my soul, round my soul. Echo around my soul, around my soul. Ain't no clouds for miles, just a cool breeze in your head. Takes us away from here, just drifting on the waves. We could take the time to really see just what's going on. All the echoes round my mind, echo around my soul. Around my soul, around my soul, echo around my soul, around my soul. Our sense of time, days just passing by. All we need is love, and love is all we need. Sometimes it's just so plain to see just what's going on. All the echoes round my mind, echo around my soul.
Thank you very much. Have we got time for a couple more, guys? One more. Right. So this one's actually not on the album. This is quite an old song, but I thought with Craig playing tonight, I thought we'd throw this one on because it's got some fine fiddle in it. And this was written 3 or 4 years ago, I think, and loosely inspired by a wonderful Irish family that we met on holiday. And it's called Pretty Little Pictures. Hope you like it.
Pretty little pictures on the wall. The daisies of our mile were once so small. Now she's riding home to her mother's call. To those pretty little pictures on the wall. She told her one of the love she found. Secrets hold no meaning with no sound. Now she's riding home to her mother's call. To those pretty little pictures on the wall. Good man, you could tell. Every day he would be wishing by the well. Now she's riding home to her mother's call. To those pretty little pictures on the wall. She told her every day from the age of 10. Make sure that she chose wisely among the men. Now she's riding home to her mother's call. To those pretty little pictures on the wall. Pictures on the wall. The daisies of our mire have grown up tall. Now she's riding home to her mother's call. To those pretty little pictures on the wall. Pretty little pictures on the wall. To those pretty on the wall.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. Hope you enjoyed it.
Jay, Lucy, Craig and Niamh, thank you so much indeed for that, and also for making sure that the hit list was there for me as well. Ian, bless his heart, just leaned over to me a few moments ago and said, "You always manage to get your own way." Do you know, he has no idea, absolutely none. That was just amazing. I think I have to say that Stranger is probably my favourite now on the new album. So please support our local musicians. So to our final guest on the couch this evening, and it's to Cara Cooper. And Cara is the Methodist chaplain here at the university, but she's also the university's spiritual care coordinator. And what she does better than probably anyone that I've ever met is to try to build different communities. And between all the diverse groups that we find at a university, whether that's religious, ethnic, or cultural. And the chaplaincy hosts a lot of events, and a lot of those events seem to involve lots of tea and cake. So we're back to the same subject, that food is one of the things that brings people together. And I think probably that's an indication of the Lancaster way of things. So Cara, we've been a colleague for the last 3 years, and a great delight to have you as a friend. And we work together on some of the most challenging things, I think, at times. And out of my window, whether it's haunting me or whether it's encouraging me, out of my office window, all I see are the 3 spires of the chaplaincy.
It's not a bad view to have out your window.
It's pretty good.
And to know that there's that space of community and diversity, and also that space of peace on campus, which we hope that the Chaplaincy Centre is as well.
So I made one of my faux pas associated with the spires, and Marion, I know, will look at me. I said, oops, has one of the crossbars fallen off the spires?
Oh,
so I know. I asked for forgiveness. Tell us a little bit about the chaplaincy before we get to chaplaincy.
Sure. So the Chaplaincy Centre is a really wonderful, rich history of Lancaster, and it's unique in the country, really, in that Lancaster University was a child of the 60s, and so being a secular university was kind of innate in its ethos, that we would be secular as a sign of the times. And local faith communities said, we think that actually a place of higher learning ought to have a place where spirituality might be discussed and where people might learn from each other and different beliefs. So external faith groups in Lancaster at the time got together and they raised the funds to build that building and then gifted it to the university.
Now we think, Marion will keep me right. I always regret having a statement because Marion will always keep me right. We believe it was the first multi-faith chaplaincy on a university campus in the UK. Would that be fair? Or intake a breath.
It was certainly one of the first.
Okay.
I would have to check.
And you will, I'm sure. You'll let me know so that I don't get it wrong again.
No, it was a scene setter.
And it's right at the heart of the campus, which I think is incredibly important. And when you look at the university's old logo, not the shield that we have now, it was known as the swoosh. Yes. And the swoosh is, of course, the 3 sides of that chaplaincy spire.
Yeah. And so that local faith communities had a vision and said, we believe that this is important, and so important that we will raise funds not for our own benefit, but for the benefit of folks up there. And 50 years on, we're still celebrating that vision and how that vision now carries into the 21st century. Sue, you and I had the great privilege of celebrating the chaplaincy's 50th
with
anniversary. You were impressive in cutting the cake. You did tell me...
Marion did the cutting of the cake. I just did the eating of the cake.
You did tell me it had to do with your forensic scientist background, but we had a wonderful celebration with Marion and Sue to celebrate 50 years of the chaplaincy.
We did. And in that chaplaincy, apart from your own role as a chaplain, you're also the university's spiritual care coordinator. Tell me what that means and what that brings you into contact with in terms of the diversity of a university.
It's another job title that I think someone should have shortened down a little bit. It doesn't quite fit on the business cards. So 3-4 years ago, the university realized that its chaplains came from external faith communities and were received with gratitude and huge thanks for all the work that chaplains do. And the university said, maybe we should have someone who brings all of those different groups together. And maybe we should have someone at the center of that, liaising with the groups and intentionally building community across religion, ethnicity, experience, background. And so the university decided to create a post for a spiritual care coordinator. And although it's a little bit of a mouthful, I reckon I have the best job in the world because, as you said, I get to meet with different groups. I get to learn their stories. I get to tell people that they matter just as they are. I get to tell people that they are welcome. I get to sit down at a table with food with people from what might be extremely traditional beliefs or conservative beliefs and people who don't fit in any belief system whatsoever. And somehow I get to kind of hold space for both of those, and I get to hold space for conversations to happen and learning and respect, and not just tolerating diversity but embracing it. So as the University Spiritual Care Coordinator, I work with people of all faith or no faith. There's pastoral care, there's community building, there's a great deal of tea and cake. There's awareness raising, so Sunita and I have worked together on a couple of things, and working with other partners across the university to say, hey, this is a thing that matters for our community well-being.
There's a story, and I love stories, but there's a story that says when Storm Desmond hit, and it hit the coast really hard, we lost all the power at the university, and the only building that had any power was the chaplaincy, whose lights were still burning. I don't know whether it's true, because it was before my time.
It's true.
How important do you think that role of chaplaincy, not just the chaplaincy, but also chaplaincy is in those times of difficulty, whether it's something as immediate as a storm or something that has gone on what feels like a very long time in terms of pandemic. Is it still as important as it was?
Oh, for sure, for sure. The Desmond story is such a wonderful example. It was the storm hit on a Saturday night, and on a Sunday morning, some of us from Christian persuasions were leading worship for our communities. It wasn't quite the only building, because by a
Oh, no, I like it to sound the only building. It's a better story.
Almost. By a weird quirk of engineering, the security lodge is on the same emergency power spur as the chaplaincy. And so
the library wasn't working.
The library was not working at that time.
We'll be changing that.
So mid-afternoon, when we started to lose the light because it was December, and students hadn't had heating because we didn't have power, they saw lights in the chaplaincy centre and they started coming in their ones and twos. And by the end of the day, we had hundreds. And my Anglican colleague and I, we turned the building upside down for every crumb of food that we could find. And we made dozens of litres of tea and coffee just to say, we know it's scary there, but there is light and warmth here. And something about those images of light and warmth that were so prevalent in the Desmond response, I think is so important now as we come out of a pandemic. We might have 2 crops of students who have never actually been on campus. So not just incoming students, but returning students. How do they find their people? How do they find the place where they belong? And I think chaplaincy is so very important in saying, here are people, here's a welcome, here's a place where you matter, here's a place where your story will be heard, here's a place where there is light and warmth, regardless of religious affiliation.
And what do you think one of the biggest challenges is that's facing our students today? What's coming? What's the big challenge for us all?
I think there's a real challenge about finding your people and finding that sense of belonging. Students who will now be third years haven't had anything resembling a traditional university experience. Students who will be first years have no idea what's coming. And for those of us who are staff who are trying to manage these diverse needs, we're all kind of, oh gosh, oh dear. I'm sure people are much cleverer than I am, but I think that there will be an ongoing effect of the pandemic about mental health, about belonging, about well-being, and how we address those things. Ian talked about how we need to address certain health matters. I also think we need to address how people fit into communities.
Well, you know that I always talk about a triumvirate, which is often fairly appropriate given our guests. But the triumvirate that I talk about, which is about well-being, is the fact that we do pay a lot of time and attention, quite rightly, towards our physical well-being and towards our mental well-being, which is a huge and increasing problem. Do we pay enough attention to our spiritual well-being? What do I mean by spiritual, do you think?
Sue, I couldn't possibly speak for you. That would be foolhardy in the extreme. But
A dreadful reputation.
Well, no, you do, don't you? I do my best.
It's good too. Sorry.
It's all right. I think spiritual well-being is hugely important. I think actually spiritual well-being is the thing that unites us. It's our shared humanity. So,
but it's not necessarily about religion, is it?
No, not at all. Some people will find their spiritual well-being through the expression of a faith. But for me, and I think for you, spiritual values are things that don't fit into mental well-being or physical well-being. It's about expressions of kindness or compassion. It's about developing a sense of awe and wonder. It's about curiosity for the other. It's about hearing and telling stories. It's about a connectedness to the earth and an interconnectedness to each other. And those are things that don't fit into a mental health list. And they're certainly not the purview of any one particular religion. For some of us, a religion helps us explore those things. For others, those values are, for me, at the core of what it means to be human.
And so I know that you've recently moved and become a resident of Morecambe.
I have.
So do you think Lancaster and Morecambe are spiritual places?
I think spirituality can be found anywhere, that there's a connection when you have a connection with another person. So in the last song that we heard, when a stranger rocks up at a pub and someone says, "What's your name? How long you staying?" That's a connection that leads to a spirituality. Living in Morecambe, I absolutely believe that Morecambe Bay has its own spirituality. Celtic Christianity uses the phrase "a thin place," and it refers to those moments when the veil between this world and what I would call the divine, others might use different language, but when the veil is so gossamer thin, it's almost as if you could see through to something more.
And that spirituality lives in our language, which of course is a huge link back to the library, but also to our music and to our art. And certainly when you look at the coast, particularly along Morecambe, then you can really feel the awe and the wonder of nature. How do you feel in terms of chaplaincy and spirituality about the Eden North project?
Oh, it's just fantastic, isn't it? So for me, one of those spiritual values is about a connectedness to the earth and a connectedness to one another, which are two values that Eden absolutely embodies and lives out to the fullest extent. So something about, what I've been talking about this whole time is about community and bringing community together. And Eden seems to me to be about rooting in a place, drawing people in from outside, but in so doing, making links, reaching across communities to, again, bring those diverse groups together. I think Eden has the potential for a sort of spirituality all of its own that is about deep connections to the earth, deep connections and respect for one another, and telling stories.
Well, stories are important, aren't they? Because it's the means by which most of us make friends, make connections. And stories are things that live, whether it's the story of a university, it's the story of a group of people. That's really at the core. And of course, when you look at Morecambe and you look at Lancaster, there are some tremendous stories that sit in there, some great storytellers. And as we've heard from our music, our local music today, translating those into the words and into the sound. It is an incredible part of the world to live in, isn't it?
I feel incredibly lucky to live here. I feel lucky to live in Morecambe Bay. I feel lucky to work not just at Lancaster University, but in Lancaster City. I think, who among us earlier said Lancashire has heart? I think when I first moved to the UK, I lived in the south and I have worked my way north. And Marion, I didn't know you came from Duke University because I also came from Duke University. I just took a slightly different path, but I did my postgrad in theology there. And I feel that as I've gone north, I feel like I've found home.
So there's very obvious to many people who are listening to you tonight that your accent is not local.
I can't believe you don't think I'm Lancastrian.
Well, it's getting close.
Just rude.
It is getting close.
I'm not persuaded.
I'm shocked.
How does a girl come from where you came from to stay in Lancaster?
Oh,
How
Sue,
does that happen?
we would need an awful lot of coffee and cake to get through that whole story. For me, and I believe in a divine. I believe in something other. So for me, there's something about a divine who guided footsteps and who nudged on a certain path. But when I was at Duke University, I had an opportunity to come work in the UK for a year or two. That was 20 years ago, and I forgot to go back.
We have a saying up north: if you don't belong, you're an in-a-boot-comer, because you've come in a boot.
3 generations in the churchyard. None of
That's
us
it.
qualified.
That's it. So I have to say, I was always an in-a-boot-comer to Lancaster, but I think it took about a month before I actually thought, no, actually, I belong. And there is something about that sense, and I found it in Lancashire more than I found it, I think, in anywhere else. That sense of welcome, that sense of equality, which I think is so important to everything that we've talked about tonight. And I think it is a very special place.
Absolutely.
And as we lay down those stories, the importance of those stories lies in our archives, and it lies in our libraries. So where else would we want to be?
I'm quite happy where I am.
Cara, thank you for
you so
joining me
much.
this evening. I can't believe that the evening is just about over. I hope you'll agree that what we've had is a tremendous evening. In a university, for me, there are 4 heartbeats. And those heartbeats for Lancaster University certainly sit within its academic departments, because people come here to learn. It lies within the colleges, because the colleges give people a sense of home. It lies within our library, right at the heart and the centre of our university, and with our chaplaincy. So I hope that in terms of the community spirit that we have, both in Lancaster and Lancashire, that you've understood a little bit about why people coming together are so important. The people on my sofa tonight are friends as well as colleagues, and so I can only thank Sunita, Marion, Cara and Ian for their forbearance in the questions that they've been asked. But we had so much more than chat. We had music, and the music that we had from Emily, from Jay and from Scott has just been tremendous. But it shouldn't be any surprise. And it shouldn't be any surprise, because this is not a library that really matches any other library that I've ever seen or experienced before. It is different, and it is changing, and it's going to get even more different. And that happens because of leadership. It happens because of somebody who has a vision. And the leader of Lancaster University's library, no one would be surprised that Andrew would choose tonight to have a room full of music and full of chat and conversation. Libraries for me used to be the place where you were told to keep quiet. In Andrew's world, libraries are places where you talk, you celebrate, and you sing. I think that's the Lancaster way. So I thank everybody for this evening, for listening to us. Please go out and support our local musicians, because we're a part of the partnership. They make the music, but it only breathes life when we listen to it. And this has been a really difficult time for our musicians, locally but nationally. So please go out and support them. And one of the things that I've learned about Lancaster in particular is that there is always a welcome, especially when there's a brew on. So please come and join us on the university campus. Come and look at our most amazing library, and please be a part of what we do. And I can only thank all of our wizards as well who sit in the background. You know who you are, making sure that we look as good as we possibly can on camera. My goodness me, that was a challenging job for you, to keep the sound going and to make it such a seamless production. It is truly a tremendous place to work and live. Thank you very much indeed, and good evening.
Backstroke love always hide beneath the covers till I talk to my daddy. He say you ain't seen nothing till you're down on your butt, and you'll be sure to say in your head, I met a cheerleader, a real young leader. All the time I could reminisce of the best time loving your brother in your